All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening to the show, watching, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I do appreciate you. Today's sponsor, as always, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road in Lackawanna, just minutes away from Highmark Stadium. Make sure you go and check them out. All right, things feel a little more back to normal. I'm recording this Tuesday just before lunchtime with my guy that I have on every week, Matt Warren, SB Nation. Been on Thursdays the last couple weeks, so now it kind of threw me off a little bit. But things are back to normal. The Wednesday episode. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Just trying to figure out some breaking news on the Pat Moran podcast here and Talking Buffalo.
Yeah. So literally just a few minutes before we were recording here, Jason from Over the Cap reported that Matt Milano has agreed to a pay cut. Jason says roughly 3.6 million. He can earn that back through incentives, and now he will become an unrestricted free agent in 2026. And Sal Capaccio from WGR just literally tweeted as well that from what he hears from a source, it's going to save the Bills roughly $6 million in cap space right now for this year. Before we get into what I wanted to talk about primarily on the show today, which will be Matthew and I are going to kind of put a grade on the Bills offseason in totality so far. We'll talk about what they've done in-house. We'll talk about their additions, what they've lost. We'll kind of come up with some grades, just something a little bit fun. And maybe we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the AFC as well later in the show, primarily the AFC East and also Kansas City. I think it's been a really interesting offseason for the Chiefs. So we'll get to all that momentarily. But back to Matt Milano. What are your thoughts on that? And I don't think it's that big of a deal because, well, let me take that back. Yes, it is. It's a big deal because of the cap space. In terms of Matt Milano becoming a free agent next year, that part I don't think is a big deal because I don't think he was ever going to be a Buffalo Bill next year, not at what his salary cap hit would have been in 2026. It kind of has felt like for a while now that this would probably be his last go raw with the Buffalo Bills. However, like I said, and by the way, originally before this contract, I looked it up on Spot Rack. The Bills would have saved like roughly $5 million by cutting him next year, but they would have made in or had they eat 11 million or something like that in dead cap, unless they did a post June 1st. Anyway, doesn't matter anymore because that's not going to be the case. What are your initial thoughts on this? And I have to ask you because, our minds always start going here. 6 million in cap space. I don't know if that's helping them with what they've already done. Are they putting that? Is that in the piggy bank for something they're going to do because of the suspensions, which happened after we've talked last? But before we get to any of that, what's your thoughts right now, Matt Milano?
Well, I mean, let's go in order, right? Okay, so right now for Matt Milano, what it means is they obviously offered him a pay cut this year, and he didn't really want to take it, and so the Bills had to trade off that lopping off the final year of the contract thing. He can earn it back through incentives. So they did the exact same thing with Von Miller last year.
Yeah.
When Von Miller took his pay cut, but they didn't shorten the length of the contract like they did with Milano here. So it's kind of like hey, we're going to, take away some money this year, but you're going to get a chance to earn, what you want a year from now and not have to go through the rigmarole of will we cut you, won't we cut you, all that other stuff, especially because he didn't have any money that was going to hit next March. No, like roster bonus or guaranteed salary that was going to hit in March or anything like that. And so the Bills could have theoretically held him until all the way to August and then like cut him. And so he can't find another home. And so the Bills don't generally operate that way, but like they had a little bit of leverage as far as that's concerned. And so I understand it from Milano's perspective. I'm very curious if that means the Bills were actually considering cutting him this offseason. It probably does mean they were considering cutting him this offseason, which, again, is probably a year before I would have wanted to. Same with the Bills. Obviously, they kept him. Interestingly, a year from now, you were just talking about using like the post-June 1 cut to spread out the dead cap. He's going to have a huge dead cap hit next year. even more so now because they won't be able to use the post June 1st cut because they just took that year off of his contract. So he's not going to be cut. His contract's going to expire. And so he's going to have a very significant dead cap hit a year from now. I'm doing math on the fly. So it's going to be, somewhere in the $17 million range for his dead cap hit next year. So a pretty big number for a guy that's not going to be on your team.
I just to update what I said a few minutes ago about, the conspiracy, not conspiracy, but the mind of me immediately starts thinking, is this a prelude to something? I gotta let you know, I got a text and I'm told that that's not that that's not the case. This move specifically does not lead credence to it. This move was actually done a while ago and it's just
That
being
makes sense.
reported now. This actually, from what I'm told, actually has helped the Bills get under the salary cap to begin with. So people thinking right now that, hey, this is where they're at, and the Bills just created $6 million of cap space because they're going to do something significant today. They could, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's that's going to happen. Just so I wanted
Right.
to update that. So
Buffalo has plenty of levers to pull right now if they want to create cap space for the 2025 season to sign any of the players that are available or to trade for any of the worthwhile players that are available right now. So their cap space is not the issue right now. It's more about future cap management as like a general concept than it is like if they can create space right now.
yeah, for sure. All right, so at least that's something different and fun to think about right now. Anyway, so Matt Milano takes a pay cut. That does assure that he's here for this season. So there's no going to be post June 1st cut talk or anything like that.
Nope.
Matt Milano is your linebacker alongside Terrell Bernard for 2025, and he'll be a free agent after this year. And like I said, from what I hear, this was already done, and this was to help them get cap compliant to begin with. That aside,
just one note. Like in order to lower his cap hit by that much, they paid him all of his salary up front. So like they've already paid him everything, well, except for like a veteran minimum salary, base salary that's going to come later. So like it's not just that like they're not going to get rid of him. Like they've already paid him for this season, and so there's no reason that they are ever going to move on from him now,
right,
until a year from now.
So, all right, something fun and like I said, a little different to talk about for a few minutes because besides that, Matt, we've hit that boring wave right now of free agency. Name guys who have names. There's plenty of names that are still actually out there, but like these bigger name guys, they're holding out for more money. They're obviously the market is not what they hoped. They don't want to sign for a lot less than what they feel like they're worth, and teams are not wanting to pony up right now. And I feel like at this point, this is where you get to where, well, if I can't get you on a bargain at a discounted rate, I'm going to wait till the draft comes and I'm going to see what we do in the draft and how the draft plays out. And then maybe we'll revisit. There's some names right now that will be around through the draft at this point, including possibly at least a couple notable Buffalo Bills free agents. Let me ask you a random question too before we get into talk about this offseason and grades. How locked in do you get around this time of year, if at all? Because I know you got a lot of duties, a lot of responsibilities with your job. How locked in and active do you get with the draft this time of year? Are you, and also, like, are you a mock draft person? Maybe it's not necessarily published for everybody to see, but like, on your own personal time, are you a mock draft guy? How locked in do you get around now?
No, I don't really watch college football. The draft process has always been kind of crazy to me. It's why I always like paid other people to do NFL draft stuff for me at Buffalo Rumblings. We had Dan Lavoie for forever over there, and have a couple other folks doing it now. I Now that we're pivoting from free agency, I spent a lot of time doing the free agency rankings over at SBNation.com with a group of people. We did consensus rankings, and I've been updating those. And now that that's starting to slow down, we're really starting to turn our attention to the NFL draft and putting out positional rankings for those, which should start launching in about, I don't know, a week or so from now. I don't do mock drafts on my own. I'll know who like the first rounders are by the time we get there, just because we'll be putting together all those lists of rankings at different positions. And then there's obviously going to be a top 50 big board or a top 100 big board from JP Acosta over at SBNation.com. But I'm I don't really go super deep on those folks, but we have a huge network of contractors at SBNation.com. So pretty much everybody that's drafted is going to have something written about them at one of our SB Nation blogs, whether it's a college blog or one of our pro blogs that went to the combine or was profiling folks for the NFL draft. And so we tend to like use that network to provide expertise for folks that we have no idea who they are sometimes. And so it's really nice having so many contractors at SB Nation who can pitch in and do some of this NFL draft coverage.
For sure. So you're not going to be spending hours a day slogging through the mud of mock drafts and trying to learn as much as you possibly humanly can about fourth and fifth and sixth round sleepers and stuff like that. See, I sort of I try to, but you fall. Look, if you're not into it at this point by now, like if you're not into the weeds already, you're never going to catch up. So I try to learn as much as I can, in part because I got to do a show 5 days a week, and like this kind of feels like what we're doing today is going to put a bow on what the Bills have done to this point with grades. One last thing, and then we're going to definitely dive into that. But slow news week after the wave of free agency and the suspension bombshell on Friday. Holy shit, that was pretty big news. We'll hit on that. I'll get your thoughts on that as well. Just a few. Sunday, slow news day, 5-year anniversary of the Bills trading for Stefon Diggs. And Stefon Diggs goes on Instagram and unarchives a bunch of photos of him in his Buffalo Bills uniform. Originally, at some point, he archived them and he never deleted them, but he archived them all so they weren't visible. That fueled a lot of, I'd say, fan, mostly, almost, not entirely, but almost fan speculation about Stefon Diggs returning to the Buffalo Bills. He is still out there, created quite a buzz. Do you feel like there's any chance right now that the Bills could have let me just ask you straight up. Is there any chance you feel the Bills could have a reunion with Stefon Diggs? Realistically, at all?
I would never rule it out, just because I know Brandon Beane and Josh Allen and all those guys. Like I would never say never, but I mean, for me, this isn't even a nothing burger. It's a nothing slider. It's so small and insignificant that it doesn't even register. Like it, I saw the chatter online, obviously, about it over the weekend. It's just like, what are we doing to ourselves here? Come on. It's the enigmatic wide receiver tweet, like, or well, in this case, it's social media post, but like, the what is it? The enemy speaks kindly and holds a knife or whatever, the wide receiver social media post. Like it's just him, being enigmatic, and maybe it's a little bit of attention grabbing. I appreciated that it was on the 5-year anniversary, but I don't think it means anything about 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I don't either. Like I said, it was a slow news day, and it was something for people to talk about, understandably so. That's what social media is, man. Okay. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. I shit on social media an awful lot, which feels hypocritical because I'm on there a lot and I talk a lot and I contribute a lot to a lot of these things that, take on a life of its own. I will say, I don't remember who it was, but one of the local content creators, podcast or something, they did put up a poll asking if fans would want Stefon Diggs back. And let me ask you this. What would you say if I told you I put up a poll? Do you want Stefon Diggs back? What do you think the poll would say? Like out of 100, what do you think the percentage would be? Do you want Stefon Diggs back? Yes or no? What would you guess that it would be?
From Bills fans, it would probably be like 80% no and 20% yes.
You're literally dead on.
Oh, there you go. But, I mean, this is no shade. Like I've got my Diggs jersey up on the wall, like behind me. It's not like I love the guy, but I just know that Bills fans turned on him very, very quickly.
I gotta find it. Hold on.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah, look, man, I'm a Stefon Diggs guy. There's my point class, man. I'm a big Stefon
Diggs over there. Like,
yeah, look at everybody. See, I love me some Stefon Diggs, but yeah, I don't think he's coming back. But anyway, the fans definitely did not want him back. You were just about dead spot on. It was 79% said no, 21% said yes. I look at it this way. You look at the Bills receiving corps and forget about Stefon Diggs. Like everyone's keep waiting for them to make this another big head. I don't think it's coming because you got Keon Coleman in year 2, your first overall pick. You just extended Khalil Shakir, so he's here for the long haul. You gave Josh Palmer pretty decent money. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. He's not just a one-year guy. If you were to bring back Stefon Diggs, I think first of all, Curtis Samuel would be gonzo almost immediately, which I don't think you're going to do that. I think they'll draft somebody. I don't know necessarily it's going to be a day one. It's not going to be a day one pick. I'd be stunned. I don't really know it'll be a day 2 pick either. They're going to add to that room, but I don't know that like Stefon Diggs, where would he even be a fit? Another receiver who doesn't play special teams. Forget about the attitude, the diva. Now, obviously, the ACL is a big deal too.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I don't see where he would fit. If he were to sign with the Bills, it's like, well, what does Curtis Samuel do? He becomes useless to me as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. You agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's probably at this point in his career not going to be like your field stretcher type dude. So like he's probably going to want to create underneath, which is like your Shakir Samuel role, depending on which guys you want to line up outside, which guy you want to put in the slot, and kind of sort of create with them. So like I think they already have that role filled, to your point. And I like they signed Palmer to be like the separation guy too,
Mhm.
where with Coleman on the other side. Like I just don't see where he fits into this wide receiver room right now. And to your point, like Curtis Samuel, almost all of his money for this year is already fully guaranteed. Like I don't see the 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 roster manipulation that they could use to get him on and into that wide receiver room.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll say one last thing about Stefon Diggs. What I don't like is people saying that he's completely done and that he's washed up. Now, obviously, the ACL is a big deal.
Yeah.
He was still really good with Houston last year before he got hurt. He was on pace for like 90 catches and 1,000 yards. And let's
Mhm.
not forget, they have and Nico Collins is an incredible receiver, and he was still on pace, even as the number 2, for like I said, for like 90 and 1,000 yards. He had a really good game against the Bills before he got hurt. My point is this: he's not going to sign with the Bills. I don't think he's done. I wouldn't write him off because you can say what you want about Stefan and his diva attitude or whatever, if that's how you feel. But one thing I don't think anyone can deny is his work ethic. Dude's a beast. He works really, really hard. I guarantee you he's already out there grinding. It would not surprise me whatsoever if anybody at his age, because my first thought was he's Odell Beckham Jr. Tear his ACL, 30 years
Oh
old. That's a wrap on him. But I'll tell you what, if any receiver could tear his ACL at his age, come back and still be a guy who gets you, maybe he's Cole Beasley now in his second reincarnation, of his career. If there's anyone who could do it, my point is, it's Stefon Diggs. He's gonna bust his ass to get back and be good again.
yeah,
Just
and he seems like a guy that's like he tore it what at the end of October. So
Mhm.
like he feels like somebody who's going to come into like maybe a training camp injury happens or a preseason or even early season injury happens and some team needs like a higher end wide receiver like the Texans would have last year when they had their wide receiver injuries. I don't necessarily think he's going to be signing a contract before the NFL draft. I mean, I think he's more of that like
Sure.
either like second wave after the draft you miss out on a receiver and you need somebody, or you get somebody injured in training camp for the preseason.
Mhm. Let's go through. I kind of want to do an overview here. Here's
Sure.
how we'll do it. I want to get your thoughts, like I said, your general thoughts, and we'll do I guess we could do a grade for each, and then we'll come back and do overall grades. But the Bills off season through this point, and I'll kind of stare this to you and ask you some questions and then get your thoughts, and we'll kind of navigate through it that way. Because I want to do this kind of like in chunks, because I think there's different elements and assets to the Bills off season right now. Let's start with in-house stuff, okay? Let's talk about their extensions. Before we do anything else, let's talk about their extensions. So there was 4. 3 that yeah, Josh Allen technically is an extension, so sure. Khalil Shakir, 4-year deal or 4-year extension, I should say. I'm sorry. Terrell Bernard, 4-year extension. Greg Rousseau, which I think surprised both of us. We've talked about this. A 4-year extension. And then Josh Allen with, of course, the big contract, the most guaranteed money in NFL history. So Brandon Beane got really busy in-house extending some of his key players, taking into account who those players are, what the deals are, stuff like that. What's your overall thoughts on that? And then we'll kind of come up with a grade for like I said, that portion of it specifically, the extension guys.
Yeah, I really liked. Excuse me. I really liked the extensions that they handed out. Shakir was less than I expected, and less than what, frankly, he would have received on the open market. So he took a little bit of a pay cut, not to, like as some sort of hometown discount, but so he could cash his first like full blown NFL, multi-million dollar check. And I appreciate that from him.
Mhm.
For him, Bernard, I think it's a really reasonable number for him. And I'm a fan of Bernard. I wasn't one of those folks that wanted to move on from him. Groot, again, it was earlier than I was expecting because I thought he would hold out for more money, considering he had cashed those big NFL checks before. But I really like the number that he settled on. I think it's 20 million a year. Yeah, 4 years, 80. 20 million a year, I think is totally fine for him based on projection, because like if he's young, if he puts it together, like he could really overperform, like Spencer Brown has his early contract extension. And then the Josh Allen one, I think, is a masterclass. I called it as much in my article over at Buffalo Rumblings. I thought both sides got exactly what they wanted out of it.
Yeah.
And just like no notes. Like it really is pristine. You could tell they've been working on it since last offseason. I know Joe Biscaglia was saying that he didn't think the Josh Allen contract would come until the summer because it was going to be complicated, right? But when they moved up that money last year, they knew that it was a ticking time bomb. And folks were disagreeing with me on this over and over and freaking over again, that Josh Allen was going to make $14.5 million this year. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. And so just to see how the numbers all came together on that deal, I think it really represents both sides incredibly well. And I'm just super happy about that one.
What grade would you come up with for those four? I mean, it feels like it's a pretty easy one, but
Right. I'm a B on most of those ones, but Josh Allen's deal was an A plus plus for me. And so I think overall I'd give, like, as a collective, like an A minus, just because like the Shakir, Groot, and Bernard ones are kind of like, they're good, they're okay. Like, I mean, we didn't like get a steal or anything, and I don't think the players took advantage or anything like that. So it's fine. And then the Josh Allen deal bumps it up a letter grade.
yeah, look, I'm with you there. And I'll say this too about the Josh Allen. He could have. Not that he ever was going to, but all I'm saying is he could have held this organization hostage. He could have said, listen, you're going to make me the number one highest paid player in the NFL. I'm not going to take $5 million less per year than Dak Prescott. Now, I know what Josh said, and I believe him, genuine, authentic. I'm just saying he could have. He didn't.
But
Well,
that's he kind of did. I mean, I'm like I said, I thought it was a masterclass from both sides. If you look at from the day the contract was signed until the day the contract ends, he's going to make the most average money in NFL history ahead of Dak by like $1 million, because Dak still had 1 year left on his other deal. And so if you add that 60 million a year to 4 years to that, his 5 year deal is actually less per year than Josh
oh,
of
sorry.
anybody in a 4 year span in NFL history. He's going to make the most from the day the contract was signed until the end of the contract in NFL history, too. So he is the highest paid player in NFL history, just not the highest paid new money player in
That,
NFL history.
okay. That's very fair. With the rest of the guys, and I'm with you, by the way. I think an A minus is pretty appropriate as well. I thought Khalil Shakir was a slight steal. I'm not going to say steal. I think it was a slight steal.
It's a
I
lot
think
of money. Yeah.
I think Terrell Bernard, will call him fair market value. I don't think the Bills overpaid. I certainly don't think they got him at a steal either.
Mm-hmm.
They're both moves on both sides of the ball that were no brainers to me, though. These are guys that you want as part of your core, part of your nucleus for years to come. So I have no issues with either of those. The Greg Rousseau one surprised me, and we've talked about this a little bit already, until I realized what they're doing opposite of him is kind of like what they usually do with cornerbacks outside of, opposite of Trey White when he was great. And now it seems like Christian Benford as well. It's like we got a premier guy here already, and we're just going to go year by year and see what we get out of that other position. I kind of feel like that's what they're doing. I mean, Bosa's a 1 year deal. Von Miller played on a pay cut last year. So, like, Greg Rousseau is going to be that primary guy right now, and they're going to piece it together. Leonard Floyd a couple years ago, like year by year by year, until maybe they hit on somebody on the draft. I am and you talked about this as well. I think we both expected Grizzo to get a little bit more money. So for him to sign right now is not a lot, but maybe a couple million per year less than what we both thought we were going to get. I'd say an A minus too, maybe even an A. Definitely no worse than an A minus though, because I don't think there's any move here that we can even debate to say, I don't know that that was a good move. I just Greg Rizzo, I will say Greg Rizzo is a big commitment. And at the end of the day, I know he does a lot of things well. I know stats can be bullshit. I know they can be deceiving, especially sacks. Sacks can be such an overrated stat.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you're paying a guy $20 million. You'd like to see him get double digit sacks at some
If
point. He has not done
if
that.
we end up, yeah, if we pay him $20 million a year and he just keeps reproducing this 2024 number, I think you're going to say that we overpaid. But if he can, like I said earlier, he's what, only 24 years old. If he can take that next step, I don't need him to be like, Myles Garrett. I don't even need him to be necessarily like elite, healthy Joey Bosa, right? Like if he can just take that next step into like a dynamic tier of pass rusher, not even the elite tier, just the dynamic tier of pass rusher, I think it'll be money well spent.
Sure. Let's get to all right. So you say A minus. You know what? I'll
Mhm.
even bump it up just a tiny bit more. I'm actually going to go straight A. A little bit of, I'm not going to say homer. Screw that. I think that's a legit A right there with what they
Oh
did.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So now let's go to their re-signings. And I also I want to factor in who they've re-signed, how you feel about those re-signings. And I also want to factor in who they have not re-signed, at least as of this recording. Who the hell knows what can happen in the next 24 hours. But as we record this right now, all right, so the Bills have re-signed Ty Johnson. They've re-signed Gilliam, Hamlin. Did they extend Reed Ferguson, or was he was an extension too? Shame on me. I should have counted him
He
among
was.
them.
I think his contract was expiring, so he's technically a re-sign in this bucket.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's right. So he is a re-signing. So add Reed Ferguson there. I thought I screwed up. I didn't. So Ty Johnson, Gilliam, Hamlin, Reed Ferguson. I don't think I'm missing anybody. Those are the guys they've re-signed. The guys who are still out there, and there's some, at least name-wise, some notable guys. Douglas, Cooper, Mari Cooper, Jordan Phillips, and Quinton Jefferson and Dwan Smoot. Those guys they have not re-signed. And I guess we'll also add in, because this is the re-signing portion, they did not re-sign Matt Collins, who goes to New England, and they didn't re-sign Casey Toohill, who I believe is I believe with the Houston Texans
Mhm.
since then. So that's a lot to throw at you, man. The re-signings, the guys that are still out there, the ones they lost. What do you like and dislike most about how this has played out with re-signings, then ultimately, what would your grade be with this portion?
I really like the three that they re-signed. So I like Ty Johnson. It's reported as like a 2.5 million average
Mhm.
contract over 2 years. So we're still waiting on details for that for me to like love it or like only like
Right.
it. But like I'd pay 2 million for that guy. Like I mean, I don't know if I want to. They probably end up paying him like 3 million in 2025 and 2 million in 2026, and so that will make me like it less. But I still like what he brings to the team. We'll say that. I really like what they did with Reggie Gilliam, and then we've talked about just raising the floor with Damar Hamlin, getting a guy who can start games for you if you need him to.
Mhm.
So I really like the three guys that they re-signed. I would have liked to have had Matt Collins back, but I get him wanting something different. Going back to play for a coach that he had a really successful season with. So I get that part. The rest of it, like, doesn't really surprise me. Like, I mean, Rasul Douglas, um, again, we can talk about raising the floor at cornerback. I'm unsure about what he wants. I know I still think he's a starting cornerback in this league, and so like he could still end up back on the Bills at this point. I'm not really surprised that Amari Cooper is still out there. Um, just he didn't have a great 2024 season in Buffalo or in Cleveland, and so I get why people are a little bit skeptical of him. And then Jefferson and Phillips, like those guys are just, I mean, they're replacement level players at this point in their careers. I don't really have a huge opinion on them. So I'm giving like the whole re-sign period, I'll say like a B, just because none of it really moves the needle a ton for me. But I like the guys that they re-signed.
That's very fair. I'm gonna go just a tiny bit lower.
That's fine. Yeah.
Honestly, I love the Ty Johnson re-signing. I've talked about that plenty. I kind of want to. I want to backtrack a little bit
Sure.
or walk my words back a little bit with Damar Hamlin. Okay. I don't hate this re-signing. My paranoia has been and still kind of remains that he's going to find a way into the starting lineup. And I just think that is a awful, awful mistake. However, him being on this roster is not a bad thing at all. He is a rosterable player. He's a good depth guy, and you could do a lot worse than Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin's not, even if he's got to start, he's not the worst safety in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like you said, the floor is established with him. So him being back at what was it, $2 million for 1 year? That's not much money whatsoever. It's also very indicative that there just simply wasn't a market out there for him in free agency. But anyway, him being back, that's a win for the Bills. I feel like, as long as he's not starting, I think that's a win for the Bills. Ty Johnson is definitely a win. I thought Gilliam was never going to not be back, so that doesn't surprise
That's
me.
fair.
I gotta nick them though, and I've talked about this a little bit. I don't care about Casey Toohill, although maybe I should care a little bit about him right now with Michael Hoecht suspended. But I, I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. I still say Matt Collins not being re-signed was a mistake. And you look at the money, and it was what 2 years, somewhere between 8 to 10 million with some incentives. I think you look at these receivers that they have on this team, even if Matt Collins was the fifth receiver and a core special teams guy, I just feel like his role on this team, he was worth the money. I think that was a mistake to let him go. And then the other thing, and this is kind of like an incomplete thing because there's still things could happen, but Dane Jackson here, which we'll talk about, but Amari Cooper, or not Amari Cooper, Rasul Douglas not here right now. I know Rasul Douglas didn't play great last year. I know, in fact, he wasn't even really all that good last year. There's a lot of people who think he's washed up, and I'm sure he wants more money. The fact that he's still out there says that he thinks he's worth more than what the league thinks he's worth. So I got to be careful when I'm evaluating that. But to me, it's a downgrade. Well, here's what I'm telling you. I think Rasul Douglas is still better than Dane Jackson. So not resigning him and adding Dane Jackson to me is a little bit of a loss. So I'm going to go B minus with these re-signings as well. I don't like the fact that they didn't re-sign Matt Collins. If they want Jordan Phillips back, they'll get him. They'll get him in now. They'll get him in May. They'll get him in July. Jordan Phillips will come back if they ended up wanting him. One other quick thing too, because I forgot. This is one last in-house thing. Not really a grade, but two cuts. Von Miller, Sam Martin. Any thoughts on those?
We saw both of those coming. I think I like both of those moves. If they may have offered Von a pay cut again, they probably did. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to say on those two guys. We saw it coming. I think they're good moves.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, Von Miller was not going to be, if he wasn't used more in the divisional round in the AFC Championship game than he was
Right.
he wasn't gonna get a snap increase going forward. It was just gonna get decreased even more. Sam Martin, it's whatever. They saved a couple bucks, and so I don't know if I was a great dad, be a B plus, A minus, whatever. Who gives a shit? I guess at the end of the day. All right, let's take a real quick break. Come back on the other side. We'll get to the free agents, and I also want to talk about the NFL as a whole a little bit as well. All right, I'm back here. Matt Warren, SB Nation. We're kind of grading the Bills offseason through this point. We've talked about everything they've done in-house with the extensions, the re-signings, the guys that they have not re-signed, the cuts. And I think we're pretty much been on the same page. Free agency. Lots of ads. I guess we could just lump them all because some of these we've talked about. However, a lot has changed since we've talked last because two of these guys are going to miss a third of the season. You know what? Real quick, before we even get into the players specifically or this group as a whole, how big of a deal to you is it to see two guys on the defensive line that you just signed 48 hours or so before? One, they just signed. The other one they didn't even know. Brandon Beane didn't even know, but missing 6 games. A lot of people, this is where I feel like the Homer glasses really come on for some Bills fans because they're acting like 6 games don't matter. All that matters is that your team's healthy and ready and playing their best football in January. That is true. But folks, it's not the birthright of the Buffalo Bills that they're going to win the AFC East or that they're going to get, home field for at least 2 games, maybe in the AFC Championship. You got to go on, you got to earn that. and not having two players that you invested good money in for 6 weeks is a big deal, man. That's like 29 games. I've said this in the NBA or the NHL. So 6 games is a pretty big deal. What was your level of shock when you heard this, and how big of a deal, and maybe I'm overplaying it, how big of a deal is it to you that these two guys are both going to miss the first 6 games?
Well, I think it being the first 6 games is important. The way that the NFL tends to schedule some of these things is they like to put some of those really sexy matchups in the first month of the season, and then more towards the end of the season. Think about Bills Ravens. What was it, week 2 last? Or no, that was whatever, week 4 or something like that.
Mhm.
Because they played the Dolphins in week 2. Like, I mean, they put some of these really big matchups in those first few weeks to make folks happy. At the networks and all this other stuff to get
Sure.
to really get off the ground. And so the Bills are going to play at least one or two of those AFC contenders in that first 6 week stretch. And so they're going to be missed. It's going to factor into tiebreakers eventually when the playoffs come around. Like, so the first 6 games is important to the Buffalo Bills. My first thought when I heard it was, I mean, yeah, it just means they're more likely to be ready for the playoffs. And so, like, again, I was like trying to explain it away to myself too. So I totally get that natural reaction. I like what Beane said. He's like, if I had known that both of them were going to have 6 game suspensions, we probably wouldn't have pursued Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi didn't know about it until like after he'd agreed to the deal and before he actually signed it. So there was a lot of gray area there, and Hoecht was upfront with them about it because he knew about it earlier. So um, having 2 of them, I think, obviously, like, makes it a lot more harder to swallow than just having one of them.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to free agency. I'll run down the ads. You give me a couple general thoughts. If there's anyone that you really like or one that you didn't like, and like I said, then we'll kind of put a grade on this as well. But obviously, the big name, Joey Bosa, of course. Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, which, by the way, I was struggling to get his name right. So if I'm thankful about one thing about the suspension, is that I've said his name so many times over the last week, Larry Ogunjobi. Now I can say it in my sleep because I was screwing it up early on. It was kind of embarrassing. But anyway, I mentioned Dane Jackson, Darrick
Mhm.
Forrest, Josh Palmer, Laviska Shenault, which I think he signed after we talked last,
Mhm.
and offensive guard Kendrick Green. Those are the re-signings, or not the re-signings, the free agent additions
Right.
that I know of. How do you feel about that group right now? What are we here on Wednesday? So free agency started like 9.5 days ago or so. I would have
Mhm.
said, this is the group you're going to get free agency right now. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a really solid group that addresses a lot of the needs we had talked about heading into free agency. Dane Jackson raises the floor at cornerback. It start at CB2. I hope it's not the only move that they make. Just like I hope, like, Damar Hamlin's not going to be starting at safety. I hope Dane Jackson's not starting at cornerback. Bosa for me is, I mean, it's what I wrote in the article when he signed. Like, it's the big move. Like, um, and I like the risk reward of it. It's definitely not a sure thing. So if, you know, for the most part, people are black and white on it. They're like, Joey Bosa is an elite pass rusher. That's awesome. Or he's always injured. And I'm like somewhere in the middle of that. Like, it's a risk reward thing at $12 million. And there's a lot worse ways you can spend $12 million than signing Joey Bosa. So I like this group. I think not a lot of big names, obviously. I doubt most Bills fans would have known like Hoyt or even Ogunjobi um, a couple weeks ago, but I really like how solid this free agent class feels when you also put in the re-signings and the contract extensions that they gave out.
Okay. I'm with you there. You got a grade. What was the grade?
Oh, I'll say like a B. Like, again, solid, nothing super spectacular. I like the Bosa risk reward, but it's still a risk with the reward.
It is. It's risk reward. I mean, it's a risk, and people just want to skip through the risk and say risk reward. No, it is a risk
For
as
sure.
well. I'm going to be not a ton, but a little more critical of this class. I'll say this: it's a practical class. It does address needs and fits on this roster. That part of it, I definitely like a lot. It's practical. It's not sexy really, but I'm fine with that. Now, free agency. all these teams just throw all this money around, usually because they're bad teams. And most of these big money free agent deals don't work. So that doesn't really bother me. The things that I liked most about what they've done is I like Josh Palmer. I think Josh Palmer's best days are going to be
Mhm.
ahead of him. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm not saying the guy's going to be Khalil Shakir, you know what I mean? But he's going, in terms of production, catches and yards, but he's going to have a positive impact on this offense. I'd be really surprised if he didn't. You never know, because I feel like you and I, if you were doing a show with me 12 months ago, we probably would have been saying the same thing about Curtis Samuel and what a great fit he appeared to be. But I like Josh Palmer. And then kind of as a sleeper, I like Derek Forrest. And I've heard a
Mhm.
lot of things. I've talked to a couple pretty smart Washington Commanders people too, and it was more about opportunity. He was really good in 2022. Then he got hurt in 2023. And in 2024, the new regime, they had new safeties, and he didn't play. It wouldn't shock me come summertime if he's very firmly in the mix, because I do not think it is a given and a lock that Cole Bishop is starting this year. I just don't. I hope he does. It'd be nice. He's a second round pick, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. So I like those picks a lot. I like the Michael Hoecht pick too, as I've gotten to learn more about him. I don't like the fact he's going to miss 6 games, but the fact that Brandon Beane knew about that and still wanted to sign him for 3 years, he's going to have a nice role on this team. Dane Jackson, I gotta have faith. I don't like him as a starter, but I like him on this team. I'd rather have him come into the game as the third corner than say Kyrie Elam over the last couple of years, or some of the other guys. But I got faith that the Bills are going to draft. I think they're going to draft a corner in the first round. Short of bringing back Douglas or Asante Samuel Jr., I think the Bills are going corner in the first round. They might even move up a little bit to get that done. And I think you're going to have a cornerback start with. So I'm fine with Dane Jackson. The two I don't like, I don't dislike Bosa's that much, but I would not have went there. We keep talking about risk reward. I just think it's really risky. If he does get hurt and he don't work out, oh man, you're in trouble. How have you improved? AJ Epenesa the best pass rusher you have on the other side of Greg Rousseau. That's just not good enough, man. It's a lot of risk, and I don't like that. I would have given. I know Reddick signed 1 minute in the free agency. There's plenty of guys that I feel like I personally would have signed except Bosa. I'd like to be wrong, and I could be wrong. If he stays healthy, I will be wrong. I feel like, but it's
It's definitely a reason I disagree with you about where the Bills are going to go in the first round. I really do want them to take that edge rusher in the first round, which means they have to sign another cornerback here in free agency. And there are still a couple names out there, whether it's Rasul Douglas or Asante Samuel, that I think could be that CB2 while you draft a guy in like the second or third round to maybe step in eventually.
sure. That I'd be fine with that. I just don't want Dane Jackson to be out there starting in week one. It's not that he's like, again, could you do worse than Dane Jackson? Sure. Just like you could do
Mhm.
worse than Damar Hamlin, but it's not ideal, and you got plenty of time to improve there. And then the Larry Ogunjobi sign, I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I know it was a bad fit in Pittsburgh. It's what I keep hearing over the last couple of years. Um, he's older. I get the fit. Like you want better behind Ed Oliver and Dwayne Carter. And even though my first thought was, well, he's 305 pounds. Is he going to play next to Ed? Well, he might a little bit. The Bills' vision for defensive tackle might be different than most people. They didn't do anything to address behind DaQuan Jones directly. If they're even going to care about the one tech, maybe they don't even care about being a one tech or a three tech as much as we do. I just don't like the signing. I hate it because now he's going to miss 6 games on a 1-year deal. And I feel like Brandon Beane got caught a little bit sitting on his hands. And well, it's tough to say because that was the best guy he felt at the time, evidenced by the fact that he still signed him, even though he knew he didn't know he was going to be suspended. Go trade for somebody. Go do something. I don't know. I don't love the signing. Anyway, as a
He
whole,
was
hmm,
he was the lowest individual grade I gave when I was like trying to put together grades here. I don't like his fit either. It's a really expensive backup at a really expensive starter position. It just didn't make roster building sense to me or like fit sense to me. I don't know.
yeah, I would give free agency to this point, and it's not done. But I give it a C plus. I think it's a C plus. It's a little bit better than average. Again, I don't love I don't love Ogunjobi, and I don't love the risk that comes with Bosa, but hey, it could be an A minus free agent class. If Joe Bosa stays healthy, he's going to be, I think he's going to be a better player than Von Miller was last year. And that's, I think, realistically what you were hoping for. One last other piece of business with the offseason, a trade. I'm sure we're probably both giving an A, but you got to throw it out there. You trade Kyrie Elam. Basically, they move up 34 spots in the draft, too, from the 6th to the 5th. And most importantly, they save $2.5 million in cap space. That's an A move, right? Hey,
A plus.
Yeah.
Yes, A plus. Great value. Can't believe they did it.
Well, okay, so we just went through all this, and I'd say, generally speaking, you probably got free agents or the offseason around a B. Going by all your grades, it sounds like about a B. You're like, this is roughly a B for you. Me too. Maybe a B minus, but B minus, a solid offseason. The suspensions definitely hurt. Look, worst case scenario, Joe Bosa gets hurt. You got two guys that you invested good money in, suspended for 6 games. Those first 6 games could be rough. Like, you know, and even if Joe Bosa's not hurt, you know he's going to have load management, especially early in the year. He's going to be brought along slowly. Kind of the schedule, some years might not matter. I wouldn't mind, you know, the schedule being a little more backloaded this year and having a little bit easier on the front side for the Bills. So that schedule.
Your Cole Bishop trial by fire at safety. Like you could see a lot of different like bad decisions happening at that defense real early.
Sure. Now, what I love, of course, is you have the NFL MVP and you have an offense that, for the most part, is running it back. You got the same offensive line, same tight ends, the same running backs, and 3 of the 4 top receivers, minus Matt Collins, whatever. They still got 3 solid receivers plus Josh Palmer. So, hey, just go score 35 points a week for the first 6 weeks and you'll be good to go. Before you get to the NFL, let me ask you this now. So the free agency, for the most part, is I think done. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. But right now, as things stand, Matt, in your opinion, is this team better on paper now than it was a year ago? So the main guys in, you got Bosa, Ogunjobi, Michael Hoecht, Josh Palmer, and Dane Jackson. The main guys out: Von Miller, Rasul Douglas, Amari Cooper, Matt Collins. Is this team better on paper right now to you?
And it's really close. Like it's closer than people want to give it credit for, I think. Um, they're probably slightly worse right now than they were a year ago. But again, I thought people overperformed last year too. So like I wasn't expecting Keon Coleman to do really a whole lot. And I think he did better last year than I would have expected, even considering the injury things. So like I'll probably say they're a little bit worse than they were a year ago, but it doesn't like necessarily concern me heading into the season.
Agreed. I agree with you fully. And I'd also say it's by name. Like Von Miller's a big name. Rasul Douglas is a bigger name, much bigger name than Dane Jackson. And you got to count the players from last year that I still think are going to be better. I think Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, and Cole Bishop has to be. They got to be better this year than those guys were last year. You can add Dwayne Carter possibly into that mix as well. It's close though.
Very.
One last thing too. My show yesterday, my central focus, it was a pod bag, and we talked about James Cook. And I basically arrived at trading him is stupid. That's where I'm at right now. Like you're talking about, you're taking a big swing on a 1-year guy or 1-year deal with Joey Bosa and Ogunjobi, and you're going to keep these guys, and you want to go trade one of your best weapons on your football team for a 3rd round pick, whatever you're going to be. How can you be all in? How could you say the goal is to win a Super Bowl this year and then you go trade James Cook? Because he's not going to sign an extension. He's going to leave after this year. Where I arrived at after spending a lot of time talking and thinking about it is let him leave then. Go get a comp pick. Let him go get a $13 million a year deal with whoever, the Vikings, someone like that, and go get yourself a 3rd or 4th round comp pick. You don't get rid of your best players because they want to get paid and you don't want to pay them. Not if you're a Super Bowl team. If you're the Cleveland Browns, F them. Bye. See you later. We'll trade you. Give me some draft picks. If you're the Giants, absolutely. You're the Buffalo Bills. You are a Super Bowl legitimate contender. You don't trade best players for not getting a 2nd round, a 3rd round, a 4th round pick for somebody who's as good as James Cook. Are you with me when it comes to that?
100%.
Yeah. All right, good. I was hoping you were going to agree with me. I was like, I don't want to have this argument. You'd be surprised at how many people are arguing, saying he's going to be a problem all summer long. He's not going to play hard. Just trade him
Well,
now, cut your losses.
no,
Absolutely.
I listened to you talk with Joby and Tyler Dunn about it. Like they said the same thing. Like there's no way James Cook is going to miss games. Like he'll come to training camp and probably sit out most of training camp, but he'll be in town so he doesn't get fined. He probably won't play in the preseason, so they'll have to ramp him up when the regular season comes around. But like further adding to the first 4-6 game thing that we were just talking about. But by the time like this season really gets into the meat of it, he's going to be back to scoring touchdowns and trying to earn the biggest deal he can, like at the end of the season anyway. Like he still has to perform in order to get that big deal in a year from now. So there's just no way he's going to miss regular season games to try and prove a point.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I love Ty Johnson being back. I've been very vocal about that. I like the running back room a lot. I think Ray Davis can handle a bigger role, but this football team is just straight up not better if James Cook is on another football team and your compensation back as a rookie. It's just not, and it's ridiculous to assume or even think otherwise. All right, quickly here, around with our remaining time. The AFC East teams, it's been I don't think anybody I don't think anybody's really stood out in the AFC East. Let's kind of start with Miami. I wrote down just a couple names. Zach Wilson they added, James Daniels a guard, Nick Westbrook a Kenny, which I actually do like him a lot. A File to Melifalo. I always have a issue saying him. Tell you what, though, he's another name I wish I'd be saying for the Buffalo Bills because I think he's a very talented safety. I think that was low key a really good ad for them. They added Al Madison too, the running back. They lost Javon Holland. They cut Kendall Fuller. Mostert's gone too. What do you think about Miami? Kind of a what you would expect with them, kind of off season. I don't really think there's needle movers per se with what they've done.
They got better at punter. I'll say that. They signed Ryan Stonehouse, so they got better at punter.
That's right.
I don't see where the Miami Dolphins closed the gap on the rest of the AFC contenders. If you want to even call them a contending AFC team with Tua, I just don't see where they improved enough because they got rid of some really good pieces on their defense and they're losing Terran Armstead, their left tackle. Like, I mean, I don't see where they protected Tua better. I don't see where they gave him more weapons. I don't see where they improved the defense other than maybe at safety. So it doesn't feel like they're making enough headway to gain on the Bills and the rest of the AFC.
I agree with you fully there. And by the way, just quickly, Sal Capaccio kind of reworked what he was saying and saying that, yeah, it is roughly around 3-ish or so million in cap space, which again, I don't really think it matters because this is about getting under the cap before. It's that move specifically wasn't used to set up something else. All right, back to the AFCs. The New York Jets, obviously the big ad is a new change, new quarterback. They signed Justin Fields to a 2-year deal. Andre Cisco is a pretty good safety that I wouldn't have minded to see land in Buffalo. They've got a defensive back too, Chris Boyd. They've lost kind of a lot, man. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams do cuts of free agency. DJ Reed, one of my favorite corners in the NFL, he goes to Detroit. They cut Mosley. Reddick is now with Tampa Bay. Javon Kinlaw's gone. Dude, they lost a lot of their defense, man.
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams. So they've lost Rodgers, Adams, Morgan, Moses on offense. They've lost Reed, Mosley, Reddick, Kinlaw. That's 4 starters from their defense last year. Justin Fields, talented, but didn't really prove all that much as a starter in the NFL. Obviously, a brand new head coach in Glenn. It kind of feels like they're starting over to some extent, right? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And then even their offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, his only NFL experience has been as an offensive assistant under Ben Johnson. So is he going to be able to like spread his own wings and fly as the Jets offensive coordinator? Pun definitely intended. They're definitely starting over on the offensive side of the ball. What always scared me was their defense because we've seen how they could give fits to Josh Allen and the Bills offensive coordinators over the years. And even like that doesn't really scare me right now. they had to take the steps that they took this offseason, but it doesn't like scare me for the 2025 year right now.
I agree. I just look, I'll never say never. I mean, every year we see it, man. Teams
Mhm.
that absolutely are atrocious the year before become good. It happens. Washington did it this past year. Houston did it the year before that. So never write off a team completely. But of those two teams we talked about, I feel like Miami probably would present the tougher challenge just because they got the more established quarterback if he could stay on the field. Obviously, they got very dangerous receivers. Although the Bills play really well against their receivers, they're missing a lot as well. I just told you before, it wasn't the Bills' birthright to win the AFC East. Maybe it still is. I don't know, man. New England, very, very active, obviously.
Mhm.
They didn't lose a lot because they don't really have a lot. They weren't really good
Right.
to begin with. Jonathan Jones went to Washington. They traded a defensive tackle to New Orleans. They've added a lot. Carlton Davis, a very good corner. Milton Williams, arguably the prize of free agency, defensive tackle. Robert Spillane, pretty good linebacker. Mentioned Morgan Moses, maybe a little short-term help for the offensive line. Errol Landry, really wanted him with the Buffalo Bills. Matt Collins, Marcus Epps, safety. They got the young quarterback anyway. This feels like a good offseason for them defensively. Mike Vrabel, the coach, not stunning, but you look at their offense right now, they still got a lot of money, and there's still names out there. It kind of feels like they're not done, right? Like this offense is still nowhere near good enough right now. Like they're still not talented on offense, but they added a lot to their defense.
Every time you listed somebody, it was like a defensive player, defensive player, defensive player.
Yeah,
Like their offensive line was not very good last year, and they still haven't addressed that. So you want to protect Drake May. You want to add wide receivers to the room that can help Drake May. I don't think they did either of those things, at least not enough. Like Morgan Moses is good. Um, I don't necessarily think Matt Collins is like the person you sign when you're trying to establish a rookie quarterback. I mean, he's certainly not trading for Stefon Diggs like the Bills did for Josh Allen, right? Like, so I still have a lot of questions. They've obviously spent a lot of money, but I have a lot of questions about where they spent their money. And it does feel obviously like the Mike Vrabel of it all is like the big looming presence in the room. Um, Maybe he's just going to recreate what he did with the Titans and have some pretty decent defenses and try to hit the lottery on like managing some offense somewhere. That's pretty much how they've been spending in free agency.
I wanted to ask you about who's the player? Who's the Colorado kid? Who's the one who just won the Heisman? Jesus Christ! It's completely escaping my mind,
The
man.
Troy guy, right? Like, yeah.
The guy plays offensive defense. What the hell is going on with me right now? I'm just
Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter.
Hunter. Oh my god! I was
thinking Troy Hunter. I don't know why. So
Henry
sorry.
was stuck in my head. Yeah, Travis Hunter. I'm thinking about the Patriots right now. And see, here's an interesting scenario. So Tennessee, let's just say they take the quarterback Ward, okay, first overall. Cleveland picks second. Let's say they take Abdul Carter, which is very, very possible. They want to have Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett. You talk about two monster defensive edges. The Giants pick third. Let's say they took Shador Sanders, the quarterback. It's possible. In fact, I've seen a couple mocks actually earlier today on Tuesday where that's happened. If you're the Patriots and you pick fourth, Hunter's there, but if you view him as a corner, you got as bad as the Patriots are, you got Gonzalez, who's a beast, and you just gave big money to Carlton Davis. So if the Patriots view him as a corner, I don't think they would take him. Now, if they view him as a wide receiver, sure. You know what I mean? But you ain't gonna how much corner are you gonna play when you gave huge money to Carlton Davis and Gonzalez is one of the best young corners in the NFL? That's gonna be a fun little plot line for the Patriots. And look, I'm willing to bet they're gonna trade, they're gonna do something to get a wide receiver, maybe a Chris Olave, someone like that. They're going to make a move, they're gonna make a splashy move. I feel like the Patriots of the three teams we've talked about by far have the most potential. They got a good young quarterback. They improved on defense. I like Mike Vrabel. They still got a lot of cap room, a lot of draft capital. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Patriots be the second best team in the AFC East this year at all. Two other teams I want to talk about, then we'll get out of here. The Bengals. They did pony up, paid a shitload of money for Higgins. Chase, 4 years, a buck 61, man, 112 guaranteed. Higgins, 4 for 115. Added a couple pieces on defense, but nobody special, and they lost Sheldon Rankins. What do you think right now if you're a Cincy fan? Because on one hand, it's like, all right, man, our offense, we got the great quarterback, got 2 great receivers. Maybe we still get some done with Trey Hendrickson. I feel like they kind of will find a way to appease him for this year. But that defense absolutely positively sucked last year. And they've done like pretty much nothing to improve it. Are they going to be we're going to beat you 48-45 team again this year? Because it sure feels like that's what they're going to end up having to do.
They're going to try. I mean, it doesn't work as we've seen in the past. You need some semblance of a defense, especially when it comes to the playoffs. Sean McDermott should be paying attention. They're not a very deep team, and yes, they ponied up for these 3 big contracts, and they're probably going to pony up for another big contract this offseason. But in 2024, they were 19th in spending. In 2023, they were 11th. That's the year they gave Joe Burrow his contract. But the year before that, they were 30th in 2022 and 22nd in 2021. So they just don't have that mid group in the middle that's making solid money that provides the depth that you need. You need a certain number of superstar players to win the Super Bowl, and then you need a certain number of Pro Bowl-ish kind of fringy guys like that. And the Bills have that. The Bills just need someone to play like a superstar when it matters most. They need Dalton Kincaid to catch a freaking pass that hits him in the hands in the playoffs, right? They need Von Miller in his 15 snaps in the AFC Championship game to actually do something, or Greg Rousseau or Ed Oliver, someone to step up. The Bengals don't have those middle guys that teams need when it comes to the playoffs. And it's because they haven't spent money. Their owner's notoriously cheap. At least you can't say that about Terry Pagula with the Buffalo Bills. I'll give him all of the credit that he deserves for spending money when it comes to paying the bills. No pun intended on that one. But we've seen bad ownership before, and Terry Pagula is not that. What they have in Cincinnati, that's cheap ownership, and so they're going to have to win their games 97-94 or something.
I agree with you too. They're a top heavy team, just like the Jets. The Jets you're like, wow, you got Garrett Wilson, you got Sauce Gardner, you got Breece Hall, you got these stars, but the middle of those guys, the right. Good to very good players on the Buffalo Bills is way better than the good to very good, on those teams after the superstar kind of drop off. The Bills only got Josh, but guys like Bernard and Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, those
James
solid
Cook.
guys, James Cook. They're just a lot better than the really good players on those teams. Last thing, of course, the Chiefs. Very interesting offseason for the Chiefs. They've lost a lot. I mean, they traded Joe Thuney. They lost Justin Reed to the Saints. I wanted him on the Buffalo Bills. He was I said this last week, I think. He was my dark horse guy. I didn't mention him, but I was like, man, what a great signing that would have been for the Bills secondary. Anyway, he goes to the Saints. Tershawn Warden goes to Carolina. A lot of money, too, surprising. DeAndre Hopkins goes to Baltimore. So they lost some pretty good talent there, especially Reed and Thuney. But they signed Elijah Mitchell, role players, kind of like the Bills usually do. They kind of went that serviceable role player route so far. Christian Fulton in corner, I wouldn't mind him at all in the Bills. Elijah Mitchell, Jalen Moore is going to be the starting left tackle this year, probably. Robert Tonyan, a tight end, who's got some talent. So they haven't really done anything big. They did take care of their own pretty well, like the Bills did as well. They re-signed Nick Bolton, Hollywood Brown, Juju Schuster, Kareem Hunt. Those guys are all back. No big, huge moves addition-wise. I don't know. What do you think about the Chiefs offseason right now? Really interesting one.
There's still, I said about Miami, I said even about the Bills, how did they get better from year to year? It feels like the Chiefs are almost treading water at this point. Travis Kelce coming back might not have been what was best for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs aren't going to cut him, but I don't necessarily know if they want to be spending that much money on a guy that's producing like Travis Kelce is at this point in his career. So trading Thuney was for the salary cap stuff. They still need to manage the salary cap, but the only way you can see that they got better is Hollywood Brown is healthy now, where he didn't play in 2024 for the most part. So it feels like their offense is still going to be really crappy this year, and that's cool for me. I mean, I'm not a Chiefs fan, obviously.
I will say though, I mean, I guess he's not an ad technically, but Rashee Rice coming back next
Mhm.
year is kind of like an ad. All right. Well, like I said, and that'll do it for today. An interesting. This is not. It hasn't been a boring offseason for the Bills. I'll say that
No,
much. A lot of mystery right now. A lot of we don't know right now because again, Bosa, you don't know. Two guys suspended for 6 games. How good will Josh Palmer be in this offense? Is he going to take that next step? I don't feel like there's a lot of sure things with the Bills right now. And if there are, they're the floor players. Like Dane Jackson, you know what Dane Jackson is. You know what Damar Hamlin is. You know what Ty Johnson is. Stuff like that. I don't know. We'll see. Been interesting. Hopefully, by next week we'll have some fun stuff to talk about. We're going to be forced to kind of get into some draft shit, Matt, because this is where it starts to slow down, man. It really
that's
does.
right. Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt Warren from on Twitter or Blue Sky, preferably Blue Sky, of course, for Matt at Matt Rich Warren. SB Nation, of course, your one-stop shop for all sports, especially football, man.
That's right.
Appreciate it, buddy, as always. Be back. Brand new show. You know what? I don't even know who the hell is going to be on the show tomorrow. It's going to be draft related. So come back tomorrow.